How's it going out there, folks? Had some problems with the stream tonight, Revolution Radio. I have problems with that StreamYard app. I think it's internet problems, so I'm going to have to get that checked out. I'm going to call Comcast tomorrow. But there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about because I feel like, again, the video really wasn't of a high quality, and I want to be clearer when when I'm able to get my to get my point across. So there have been some ongoing protests in Cuba, and I want to preface what I'm saying about Cuba by saying this. I'm very much aware of human rights abuses in Cuba, clamping down on dissidents, the historical persecution of the LGBT community. Um, Cuba is not some kind of communist paradise. It is not socialism imagined. Cuba is a poor country in the real world. I believe doing the best it can to survive. I do support the Cuban Revolution. I have to say that. Um, I want to have this talk, but I want to make it a little bit more informal. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with what I had posted on Facebook. Um, I got a bunch of shares. I mean, I think that was cool. A couple people shared it. I saw that there was some back and forth, some straw manning of what I had to say, but I guess that's always going to happen. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to read what I posted on Facebook. So I just put some Cuba thoughts. There are over 2 million people in Havana. A protest of under 1,000 people is not a reflection of the popular will. We're looking at a few thousand people in a number of cities in Cuba. I put any discussion on Cuba that doesn't address the embargo or the decades-long terror campaign by the U.S. government is disingenuous. From attempts on Fidel Castro's life, from sending terror squads, to poisoning food, withholding medicine, and to, of course, the embargo. So the example I gave tonight of the embargo was I talked about how the news goes by so quickly. The news cycle is what I'm trying to say. So we had the gate of hell open up in the Gulf of Mexico, and I think people just kind of looked the other way instead of really addressing it. And also, what was I going to say? The evergreen. Oh my God, I'm completely losing my mind tonight. It's late. I'm sorry. It's what time is it? It's a quarter after 10. But the Suez Canal, I'm sure everyone remembers about a month ago. I'm laughing. There was that ship. It was called the Evergreen. It was trapped in the Suez Canal, and there was fears that it was going to block up commerce, block up the traffic for like weeks, even possibly months. And we just found out that, and obviously this is after repairs, but last week the ship finally was able to leave the port and go on and continue its journey. Now, when we think of ships that big and the cargo that they have, know that again they're carrying a lot of cargo, but they stop at a number of different places, right? So if you're Nike or if you're Toshiba or if or it doesn't matter what you're selling. It doesn't matter what you're selling. Uh, you want to sell your goods in the United States. The United States has a large market. You might want to be able to sell your goods in a number of places. So if you load your cargo on a ship, you could send it to the United States to sell some goods. Maybe then it'll move on to a place like Brazil or Colombia to sell more goods. The problem is with this Cuban embargo is if I am selling my product and I want to put it on a ship and send it to Cuba, the problem is that ship, and there are a number of other sanctions that honestly, I don't even know them all. Trump increased like 200 sanctions on Cuba, all to please the right wing Cuban population. But here's the problem. If you have this ship and you have all these goods and you want to sell them in Cuba, that ship can then not go to the United States for a certain amount of time. Let's say it's 6 months. So you have energy being wasted, oil being wasted, time being spent. Um, so nobody really wants to spend the extra money to stop at Cuba, which is they were very much dependent on the Soviet Union and they're very much dependent on China now. Um, but the thing is, Cuba ends up getting locked out. So earlier on, in the beginning of the pandemic, we were praising Cuban doctors. They were talking about Times People of the Year, Nobel Peace Prize for the Cuban doctors. Unfortunately, now, even though Cuba has a number of vaccines that they've created, they don't have the syringes to administer them. They don't have access to medical supplies, to food stuff. They don't have access to materials that will enable them to help their population, right? And you see people they're complaining. They're like, well, why are they still building hotels when we need these supplies? And if that's the case, then that's absolutely unacceptable. But again, it's not just Cuba. See, this is the problem. Cuba gets the focus, but it is the entire global south, as they say. It is the entire developing world, as they say. It's all of these places that are experiencing shortages, but we only tend to focus where we want to. Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia. We don't want to talk about El Salvador or Mexico or Guatemala or Brazil. We're not going to talk about Brazil, where with Bolsonaro looks like he's on his deathbed, right? He probably saw the latest poll numbers and Lula's absolutely wiping the floor with him, right? Yes, people are angry in Cuba, but we never got to see the Cuban Socialist Project because the embargo has blocked out Cuba for decades. Socialism doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work because the powerful countries don't allow it to work in the weaker. They don't allow it to work in the weaker countries. They intervene, like in places like El Salvador, like in places like Haiti. We see the cost of American intervention in Haiti. We see it in Iraq. We see it in Afghanistan. The Cubans know what American intervention means. Black Cubans know what American intervention means. They see these people salivating in Miami, thinking that they're going to come back and buy everything up, and they don't want that. There are people that are going to be willing to defend the Cuban Revolution with their lives, and it's going to be worse than Afghanistan, and it's going to be worse than Iraq because these people have something to believe in. It's a disaster. Biden hasn't loosened any of the 200 restrictions that Trump put. I'm sorry, sanctions that Trump put in place. He hasn't even gone back to the policies we had under Obama when people were traveling. Cuba is a poor country, but never forget they're all poor countries. Cuba at least has higher life expectancies, lower infant mortality rate, actually a lower infant mortality rate than the United States. Higher standard of living than anywhere in Latin America. But because they're the communist country, that's where the eye goes. That's where CNN wants to talk, right? We're not going to talk about riots in Haiti. We're not going to talk about riots in Brazil that have all been bigger. Colombia criticizing the US. We don't see those at all, but we see the ones in Cuba. I'm sorry, I was supposed to be reading these and I went on my tirade here. And I mean, this all echoes what I had to say. Where was it? Here we go. Like I just said, Cuba is so any discussion of Cuba without mentioning the embargo or terror campaigns where they sent these right-wing Floridian Miami death squads into Cuba, and they were shooting teachers for teaching people how to read. It's not a joke. It's not a game. If you're going to talk about the relationship between the United States and Cuba, you have to mention these things because this whole SOS Cuba movement and these discussions that we're seeing in the mainstream media on CNN from a lot of these talking heads, they're not even acknowledging these things. We have to talk about these things. There's a reason why these countries are angry. When we say, why do they hate us? This is why. Because we meddle in their affairs. So that's what I mean when I say you're disingenuous if you want to talk about Haiti and if you want to talk about Cuba and you don't want to address these things. My next point, Cuba is a poor country with many problems. I guess I could have really gone into it a little bit more, but that echoes what I said in the preface. But so are El Salvador and Haiti. Blaming socialism is sloppy, and again, it's disingenuous. Cubans have no guarantee that their island won't be carved up like every other country in the region. They don't want, the Miami Cubans, and they don't want the big, fruit companies and mining companies to come and start carving up the sugar industry. Forget it. They'll come and they'll carve it up, and the people will get nothing because this is what happens. Look, this isn't a game. This is what happens. You can read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. You could read again Killing Hope. If you don't, you could read Smedley Darlington Butler talking about being the gangster of capitalism. If you don't play ball, they come after you. They will overthrow you. And we've seen it again and again and again. I put the rallies in favor of the government have been bigger. And I don't know if you saw this, but CNN was posting pictures of the so-called rallies. And well, this is a number of places. And they were pictures of the pro-revolution rallies, because you could see the red and black 26th of July movement flags that they had hanging up. The 26th of July movement was created in commemoration of when Fidel Castro and the early revolutionaries attacked the Moncada barracks in an attempt to gain access to the weapons there. But yes, the rallies in favor of the government have been bigger, and they've been meeting people in the streets. So look at the similarities between right-wing riots in places like Venezuela and Bolivia and what happened in DC on January 6th. We are seeing glimpses of the same playbook in Cuba. Now, I said glimpses. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but you see an uprising, very much like we saw in Bolivia, very much like we see in Venezuela, right? Where the government seizes on that. Oh, these people, they're lashing out against these tyrannical governments, and the mainstream media comes right into it. January 6th, it's the same idea, except the liberal media in the United States wasn't down with it. What's good for thee is not good for me. I should have said that. I got dragged on that one. Again, that's the idea with the United States. It's what's good for thee is not good for me, or what's good for me is not what's good for thee. And that's the problem. It's January 6th would have worked in a developing country. This is what I mean. I'm saying glimpses. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but I had a couple snarky comments come after me for that one. Recent protests in Haiti and Colombia criticizing U.S. foreign policy dwarf the one in Cuba. Not even close. Very little mention in mainstream media. Well, again, I mean, I already said that. Very little mention in mainstream media. Cuban police not murdering anybody. You hear reports of people losing their eyes. Was it in Colombia or Chile where people were losing eyes? And it was like dozens of people lost their eyes because the police were shooting people in the face with tear gas and rubber bullets. Right? That's not what's happening in Cuba. And if it was happening in Cuba, you would hear it all over. It would be all over the radio. It would be all over the internet, all over the television. The Cuban Revolution was good for the region. Yeah. Hiring doctors, teaching people, literacy campaigns, hygiene campaigns, advancements in science, advancements in racial politics, advancements in sexual relations was the term, gender politics. Cuba has made advancements in many places, educated women, educated people, but they don't have access to the rest of the world, right? If Cubans deal with brain drain, talent drain in a way no one else can, right? Because if you're good and you're Cuban, you want what's best for you and your family. I get that. You don't really always care about politics, the so-called big picture. Right? You go to something, you want to leave. And that, but again, that goes for everywhere. You could be Nigeria, you could be Zimbabwe. You want to go where the money is. It's not a rejection necessarily of the political system. Might be a rejection of poor economic relations. But like, as I said, if you want to defeat the Cuban Revolution, send Coca-Cola, send Nikes. We always have to do things the hard way. Oh, this is a good one. You always hear this from right-wingers. So I put, you don't need to live in Cuba to have an opinion. Stop that nonsense. Oh, you don't live in Cuba. You don't live in Bolivia. You don't know what's, man, I don't need to live there. I don't need to live in California to have an opinion on California. I don't need to live in Canada to have an opinion on Canada. This is a free country. I could talk about whatever the hell I want. I have 2 degrees on politics and political science, international relations. I talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. Oh my God, people crack me up. But we need to be realistic about what foreign intervention would look like. It would be violent, it would be disastrous, and it would result in civil war and a place like Cuba getting carved up like a Christmas turkey. There's a picture I like to put in a lot of my PowerPoints. It's from the 19th century. It's anthropomorphizations of a number of different countries, and you have China protesting as all the foreign powers are carving them up. But that's the game of empire, right? When people refer to the United States as empire, they're not trying to necessarily be hyperbolic. They're not crazy. They see the United States as an empire. But I mean, you get just the snarky types in this country that don't really understand that difference. Um, just some facts here. Over 6,900 people are contracting the virus, coronavirus, every day in Cuba. They don't have the infrastructure or the funds to properly deal with the virus. But again, we see this everywhere. I don't know if you're a Black American, would you rather live in Cuba or would you rather live in the Jim Crow South? Sada Shakur lives in Cuba. Uh, Fidel Castro always had a good relationship with African countries and with African Americans. It was Riverside Church in Harlem where he would go and he would speak, what he would address everyone. There's a famous picture of him speaking, and I had it on a postcard from years ago. I don't know what the heck I did with it, but it's out there somewhere. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, there was Haiti. Yeah. Yeah, so Haiti, number one, the State Department hasn't ruled out intervention. Why? Because the former president of Haiti, a guy, I'm gonna butcher his name. It's Jovenel Moise. He was the prime minister of Haiti, and they're saying over 30 gunmen, mercenaries, busted into his house under the cover of night, pretending to be DEA agents. They tortured him, they broke his arm, they pulled out his eye, and then they shot him, I believe, 12 times. They went on the run. They caught 28 of them. Two of them were Haitian Americans. Oh boy. And the other 26 of them were Colombian mercenaries from a company called, I think they're called CTU, owned by a Venezuelan. What is it? Do I have it there? Anyway, it's oh, yep, CTE. There's a security company owned by a Venezuelan. So we've got right wing Venezuelans, right wing Colombians, undoubtedly right wing Cubans, and right wing Colombians all working together, thinking that they can destabilize governments. Again, when we talk about the same playbook and glimpses of the same playbook, right? These people feel entitled to run these countries. They think that they're born better. And it's we see them working together with private industry to destabilize governments. It's a regional thing. How are they able to get in? Well, from what I understand, Haitian businessmen, Haitian politicians do use private security for their security, for their self-defense. So it's not uncommon to bring in mercenaries or foreign security agents, workers, to take care of that. So they were hired under this company CTU, an American firm based out of Miami, owned by a Venezuelan. They're saying, over 30 of these Colombian mercenaries being paid $3,000 a month. They bought tickets, flew to Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, and they drove into Haiti where they carried out the execution. Police caught them. There was some holding up at the Taiwanese embassy. There was some people, got into some shootouts. They took some police officers hostage. And actually, there's some more people on the run. They don't know who they are. So why? Well, we don't really know why. The Haitian police have come out and they have said that it was, or that the mastermind of the plot is this guy. His name is Christian Sanon. He is a doctor, they're thinking, I heard him referred to as a failed businessman. He may be Haitian, he may be Haitian American. I'm not so sure as to what his citizenship is. It might be both. There's a video of him claiming that he wants to be, in English, claiming that he wants to be president of Haiti, but apparently that's like a thing. A lot of people do that. So he is being accused of being the mastermind of the plot. There are reports of him being kind of like a Christian fundamentalist. So he might be mentally ill. The accusation is that he might be a patsy. He might be a fall guy. And if he's one of these religious fundamentalist types, he might be easily swayed. if there's some mental illness in there, that could add to him being easily duped, because they're asking, like, how did he do it? How did he come up with the money to take a private jet into Haiti, right, to be able to afford 30 like, let's do the math, like, because I'm terrible. I mean, we're talking, we'll just say 30 men times 3,000. Yeah, that's duh, Christian. Duh, you're losing it. It's too late. That's 9 grand a month. I mean, I guess if you have a couple grand saved up, it's doable, but you have to pay for these people to eat. You know, you have to pay for plane tickets. I mean, that's going to add up. So authorities aren't really sure. Biden, like I said, hasn't ruled out sending military intervention, but there are some investigators there that are helping out with the investigation. There are a number of people claiming to be in charge of Haiti. The current gentleman, oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. It's late. I'm sorry. But currently, he has support from the United States and the Canadian governments, but they expect him to carry out elections within the year. So, I mean, we have to stop and think about where these firms lie, what they're doing, what they know of, who they're protecting, what kind of connections they have. One of these Haitian Americans that was captured uh, has ties to the DEA, so they're still trying to figure out what that is. But I mean, this is the cost of empire. This is what happens when you meddle in other countries' affairs. This is what happens when you don't allow countries to, to have self determination. This is what happens when you continually interfere, when you intervene, when you, mislead, misinform. The United States, or the people of the United States, are grossly misinformed about what their government does. And I think a lot of people would be disgusted if they really knew. But it's late. I'm going to let everyone go. I just wanted to get this out there. Like I said, those StreamYard videos are pretty terrible. Or at least I'm terrible. Everyone else does great. For me, my internet connection seems to be really slow. So I guess I'm going to have to give Comcast a call. All right. So take care of yourselves, folks. Have a good one, and good night.